Hi.
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
There we go. A little feedback. Where's that coming from? That's coming from your mic, Jonathan. That's not your problem though. That's operator error. I'll take full responsibility for that. All right. You gotta love live television, right? You gotta love it. All right. Welcome, Morning Talk. J.C. McCauley here, along with the champions of talk. Of course, this morning's talk champion in the house, Jonathan Small. Good morning, Jonathan. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, Stan. Good morning to you, too, as well.
How was your weekend?
Weekend was nice. I mean, yesterday was a great day just to be outside, man. It felt like night and day compared from Saturday to Sunday. So yesterday was just a picture-perfect day. I mean, I thought I was in springtime at one point.
It did get quite nice out yesterday. And, bail us out of the bitter cold.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
But I think the good thing about the cold is there is some benefits from cold. It kills the germs, and it can kill off insects like mosquitoes and bees. So there is some benefits. I don't know if that cold jet blast was enough to really kill off everything, but there is some benefits of having cold weather. But you don't want it too long.
No.
No.
It was cold, but it was a pretty nice weekend nonetheless. You ready for Super Bowl?
I am ready. I mean, yesterday it's kind of like taking the day off from football.
You didn't watch the Pro Bowl?
I didn't watch the Pro Bowl, man. The players that could be playing, they're not going to be playing. All of the players. It's been watered down. The Pro Bowl used to be in Hawaii, and I used to love it then. It's still nice, but I just can't get into the Pro Bowl. Give me the regular season. Give me the playoffs. Give me the real season. The Pro Bowl is a good honor now. Don't get me wrong if you make the Pro Bowl. But, again, so many players that get selected for the Pro Bowl due to injuries in the upcomings. The Pro Bowl used to be after the Super Bowl, which makes more logic.
Now, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Because you got key players that's not going to play,
right? Because
of the risk of an injury next week,
right?
So I don't know why the NFL switched it like that. I mean, maybe from Hawaii to wherever they played at yesterday. I'm not even sure where they even played at, but you can kind of deal with that. But you definitely need to have it after the regular season is over, and then let all of the main players who have been selected actually play.
Right. The We haven't been here since the Eagles game. Oh yes, we were. That's right. Last week we jumped right. We went. We didn't discuss football.
Right.
That's right, because of the situation down in Tennessee. But how about the referees? Referees, in both of those games were like horrible.
You mean last week's playoff game?
Last week's playoff game, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that there were some calls that really shouldn't have been called. I know the call against the Eagles and 49ers game when it looked clear evidence that the guy from the Eagles dropped the ball and it hit the ground. If that's one of the plays that you're talking about.
There were several plays. People were very upset over the referees and how they were calling the game.
Well, the play with Kansas City and Cincinnati when the Cincinnati Bengals pushed Patrick Mahomes out of bounds, that was a good call, actually. He was clearly out of bounds, so it couldn't be that play. There might have been some other plays in that game that was miscalled or called. And you have instant replay, but instant replay can't technically always I guess there's certain times when you can go for instant replay on a pass interference, but then sometimes you can't. It's kind of tricky there. But if you drop the ball or something like that, instant replay can clearly override that if there's enough evidence. But I don't think the calls cost any of the teams the game, though. Is that what you kind of?
I don't. All I know is there was a whole lot of uproar over the referees. If it would have been the Patriots, and they'd have said that
the Patriots had something to do with it.
Yeah, 13th man on the field, the ref.
Yeah, that's true. Exactly.
All right. Nonetheless, it's time. It's Monday, which means it is time for us to have our special guest join us. Every Monday, we have a special guest join us from somewhere around the world. They're always very, very good. I call these mini master classes on success because everybody that comes here is an expert at what they do. So take notes, and you'll learn a whole lot from people who have life experience and all kinds of other things to add. So we will let Jonathan have the floor and introduce us to our special guest for the week.
Well, good morning to people out there on Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley Talk Show. This morning we have a guest who played an instrumental role in the music industry, the R&B sound, and a major management music company to go along with many other different criteria that he consists of. The guest this morning on Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley Talk Show is no other than a veteran music producer, songwriter, music artist, and also believe keyboardist as well. No other than Paul Laurence. Good morning, Paul. How are you doing?
Good morning, Jonathan. I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you too. It's our pleasure. Paul, could you kind of let people know a little bit about yourself and background briefly before we get into our topic of discussion?
Okay, I'll do the Cliff Notes version. I'm born and raised in Harlem, New York. My grandmother who raised me, along with, as they say, the village, the community. I attended, church at an early age, and that's where I got my musical aspiration chops under the direction of Mr. Andrew Cooper, who became eventually became the pastor of the church. But at first he was the musician that this was amazing, and I just sat under his tutelage and learned everything I could, soaked up from him. And then from there, I went on to high school, singing in choruses and things like that, and formed a group after that, and we did local things in Harlem and around the New York City. And from there, I tried to break into the music industry, as a lot of people did, and just axing it out, grinding it out, as you would say, until I ran across a demo tape that I sent on cassette. If you know what that is, I sent out and made a connection with someone, and I came in, put us together, a couple of us together, Kashif and I, and from there we went on and created whatever we created.
Mm-hmm. Now, just to go backwards a little bit, didn't you actually learn keyboarding or the keyboardist skills from Valerie Simpson, if I'm correct?
I didn't learn from her as much as I learned from Andrew Cooper, but she was a part of White Rock at the time, so she was definitely, her and Nick were, solid inspirations coming out of, having a visual that I could see, that I could touch, mm-hmm. to see their success. So they were definitely inspiring, but in terms of the piano, that was all Minister Andrew Cooper.
Oh, okay. So was keyboarding and piano your first start in music, basically?
No, I used to actually sing in talent shows with local kid groups. I had one I was in a group called the Determinations. We had a brother group that was a little older than us called the Metallics. So we used to do shows around the community and talent shows. So I was always performing, somewhere, but I didn't really pick up the instrument until I got a little older in church and started from there.
Paul, did you ever have to go, or did you ever go to the Apollo Theater, seeing that you're from Harlem?
The Apollo Theater was my college, believe it or not. For a good period of maybe 5 years in a row, I was there every single week. Mm-hmm. It did not matter who was there. A lot of my friends and I, we were, believe it or not, it cost about 90 cents to get into the cheap seats. So mm-hmm. It would be a gang of us, and we'd all chip in, to add up to 90 cents and get one person in. and then they would go to the back door, open that back door, and we would run up the stairs, and we would stay there. And back then they did shows like maybe 4 times a day, so we would stay as long, until we got tired. We'd stay for the first show, second show, third show, depending on how we enjoyed the artist. So I lived at the Apollo Theater.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you actually perform at the Apollo, and did you ever win? I mean, what kind of strategy did you have to get on stage at the Apollo Theater?
Oh, no, I never performed at the Apollo. I always was in the audience. Amateur hours was on Wednesday night, so I was a little too young. You had to be out at night. It was a school night. So, but by the time I was able to do an amateur night, me and my friends, we thought that was corny. So we just moved on from that.
Okay. Well, Paul, eventually you would land, I guess, a key position at Hush Management or Hush Productions Company. How did that all come about, you being involved with Hush Productions?
Well, to back up a little bit, Kashif and I were working together. We were put together by this person named Maury Brown, and he thought he saw something in the two of us. We didn't know each other, so he met Kashif, and he met us separately, and he thought that if we came together, we could create something. So we ended up creating some things together, and from there, I think we had started working with Melba Moore, and from there, I hooked up with Hush.
Now, when you say working with Kashif, is this like a partnership? I'm kind of pitching, is it like Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, or you're just two independent producers that happen to work together on the same record or same album?
Well, we were independent at first, but we were put together like a Jam and Lewis or Ella and Face. But we didn't stay together. But we were only together for about maybe 6 to 8 months, and that was it. We were done. He went his way, I went my way.
And you also work with many similar artists like Stephanie Mills. Was it Evelyn Champagne King? Did both of you work together simultaneously with Maury Brown?
Right. We worked on Evelyn King, Howard Johnson, and I think that was it. Evelyn King and Howard Johnson together, and then Melba Moore. Then we went our separate ways from there, because it wasn't like we started as like Jimmy and Terry. They kind of like formed a band together and got to really vibe, and over years before they got together as a team. So Kashif and I came together like arbitrarily. It wasn't, we just had some synergy together, and it worked for a period of time. And then, of course, not having the background of being with each other for a long period of time, projects just came in, and, he just started taking projects, and I started taking projects. So it just kind of, moved on from there.
Well, but actually, Kashif, he never actually worked directly or with Hush Productions. That was kind of your role. I mean, I'm trying to picture, how did Hush Productions had a common...
That is, well, he worked with Melba. That was about it. He did, I think, 1 or 2 songs with Melba, and that was his whole thing with Hush. So you're correct. He really, in a sense, he didn't work with Hush, but he did. He started, with Melba, 1 or 2 songs, and from there he moved on.
Now, your role with Hush Productions, you consist of other different artists beyond just 1 or 2. So you kind of had more consistency with Hush Productions. Could you kind of let people know a little bit again how, I guess, the time span of you working, first of all, with Hush Productions?
Ooh, time span. You're trying to maybe come up with something that's not accurate. But I'd say a good 4 to 5 years. Name the year, I don't remember off the top of my head. I would have to look at it. But I started working with Lilo Thomas. Was my first solo as a producer without Kashif and Maury. So that was like my baby, learning to kind of be on my own in the studio. And I thought we did some great work. Together. Lilo, he didn't become the star that we would all hope that he had, but he wasn't no chump. He made a dent,
Now, Paul, would you say your producing sound is similar to Kashif, or y'all have a different type of sound?
Well, it's hard to say that it's not similar, because we came in separate. So we, whatever musical I mean, he came from like BT Express and that crew, and being in the business for a while. I came in green, like this is my first venture inside, and so we had different backgrounds in terms of style.
Mm-hmm.
But when we coalesced the styles together, it became that sound. Kashif was that dude. You know, you put him on a synth bass, and nobody, you know, to this day, I can pick his bass playing out on synth above everything that I could, you know, if I know that's because she's playing the bass, I can just pick it out. I bought a chordal structure that was different than what he was using. So the combination of his bass playing and chordal structure, I think that was our sound per se. And then when he went on, you know, we kind of like took from what we created together and used that on our separate projects.
Mm-hmm. Now, one big separate project and one big major solo artist was Freddie Jackson, someone that you actually grew up with together. How did you get connected with Freddie Jackson to have him sign with, was it Hush Productions or was it a record label independently that Freddie Jackson signed with?
I don't know his particular deal in the beginning. I think he might have signed to a production company.
Mm-hmm.
that Hush had a few deals, you know, that as a production company, and I guess they put him in one of those deals, and as long as, they put him in one of those deals, as well as Lilo was in one of those deals. So it was always like a middleman thing with Hush and the label.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think eventually Freddie signed directly to Capitol, but I don't think that happened in the beginning. But I met Freddie in church years ago. We were teenagers. And he had come from another church. I think he attended a church called Mount Nebo, grew up in that church. And one day he and his friend Reggie King, I guess they were looking for another church or somewhere else. And they came to our church, White Rock Baptist Church. And he started coming regularly. It took a few weeks to even realize that he could sing, because he would just come in and they would just sit in the background and sit in the service and enjoy the service. And then one day, I don't know how it started, but one day we heard him sing, and boy, oh boy, life changed as we knew it.
Mm. So you had already been aware that he was a good singer before he even signed a record deal and became famous all over the country and all over the world. You can kind of tell that Freddie was going to be a great singer just by listening to him before he signed the deal.
Oh yeah, he was great when I first heard him. I mean, great. I mean, and that's something to say coming from the churches that I've come from. There's a lot of great singers, and he was among the cream of the crop. So yeah, you could tell, like, you know, not having any experience of beyond what we were, you know, we knew it was something special, and knew that it could go somewhere. But the job was now, how do you get it to go somewhere?
Mm-hmm. So you kind of had a feeling that, I mean, I don't know, how did the deal come along where you was going to be able to produce Freddie Jackson's song and some of the songs on the album of his debut album?
Well, let me back up a little bit. From when I met him and I started working with him as a singer, I formed a group, and the group was called LJE, which stands for the Lawrence Jones Ensembles. That was the big name, or the names going on back then, how they made groups. And so we would perform, and he was the lead singer of the group. So we developed over a period of maybe 2 or 3 years of hardcore learning how to sing R&B, transitioning from gospel, because it's very different in terms of the inflections and how to not ad-lib so much and stuff like that. So we had to train out of that, so to speak, if we want to go to the next market. So we ended up forming a group, doing local shows, saving money to do a demo, and one of those demos was Jam Tonight. Mm-hmm. And I submitted that song to, you know, do the demos, you go around, try to submit it to people to see if you can get a deal. And I was trying to get a deal on the group, but, you know, nobody would bite. But one day somebody called back that I had submitted the tape to and said, hey, I really like this song, Jam Tonight. Would you be interested in letting us do the song? I want to record it on, the producer wanted to record it on BT Express. That producer was Maury Brown. So at that time I said, well, nah, we're trying to get a deal ourselves. So, but, you know, maybe, I don't know, in the future I'll send you something else. And I didn't think anything of it. Long story short, months go by, the group breaks up because people were getting discouraged because things weren't happening fast enough, you know, whatever. And that's just the nature of the business. And so, I was like in the movie The Temptations when Otis says to Blue, "We got a card." So I was like, I got a card with that cassette. I'm going to call that dude back and say, "Hey, man, that song is available if you want it." And so I called Maury back, and this was months later, but he was like, "Well, I already did the album, but I was definitely, I can't use that song right now on the act that I'm working with, but I have an idea. Did you put together the song and whatever?" I was like, "Yes, yeah, da, da, da." So he said, "I have this idea of putting together. I met this other guy named Kashif, and I think you two together would be great. I'd like to put you guys together in the studio and see what you come up with." So from that, we started working on Evelyn King, Howard Johnson, and then when I met Hush through Melba, working with Melba, you know, we mentioned Freddie Jackson,
Mm.
and they were like, "Oh, okay." So and then brought Freddie in. Freddie ended up actually singing background vocals on Melba's tour for a while, and then when that deal opened up that Hush had, they put him right into that slot. So that's how it became.
Mm-hmm. Great. Stan, do you have anything you want to ask Paul, or any information you want to address?
No, it's just fascinating hearing the story. It's like it's like a biopic. I mean, I can see all this stuff happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Definitely. Okay. Well, again, Paul, obviously Freddie Jackson was very, very popular when he debuted his album. The sound of, I guess, his debut single, "Rock Me Tonight for Old Time's Sake," where you basically solo written and solo produced that particular song. Did you kind of tell when you was writing that song and getting that song produced that it was going to be a hit?
Well, I mean, you have a feeling. You can't, I've never had as my first record. I mean, Evelyn King stuff blew up.
Mm-hmm.
Howard Johnson blew up. So yeah,
That's true.
That was, that was special. I mean, but by the time "Rock Me Tonight" came, it was the quickest song that I have ever written.
Mm-hmm.
I literally wrote that song within the basis of it within 5 minutes. Of course, I had to, after that, go and just put it in its format. But the essence of the song was written in 5 minutes, and I knew that I had something special. I had called Freddie over to my apartment to play it for him, and we looked at each other like, "Wow." So, but we didn't know what it was going to do at that time, but we knew it was something special.
Mm-hmm. And then again, you did mention Evelyn, and I will say Evelyn King. She doesn't like to go by the name Evelyn Champagne King anymore. Okay. I don't know why she dropped that nickname, whatever title that name used to be. But again, you did work with Evelyn Champagne King, Lilo Thomas, so you were pretty much already established as a music producer. I was just thinking, with Freddie Jackson, wasn't this kind of your first solo producing project, or did you do solos before Freddie Jackson?
Lilo Thomas was my first solo as a producer project.
Okay.
Actually, I only ended up doing one song on Freddie's debut album because I didn't have time to do any other songs because I was digging deep in Lilo's project. So, but I definitely was not going to miss out on the project. I would have loved, hindsight, I would have loved to have done more on that first project, but I only had time to do "Rock Me Tonight" on the first project.
Mm-hmm. And then shortly after, you would also produce Stephanie Mills. You're putting "A Rush on Me."
Right, a song that was brought to me by a very, very, very talented brother, Mr. Timmy Allen, an extraordinary bass player, songwriter, musician, producer in his own right. He came to me with the concept of it, and we put it together, and Stephanie had a nice little hit with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, the time span now, Freddie Jackson's debut album came about in 1985, so you were still technically at Hush Productions in 1985. And I'm just trying to picture the time span, whether it's important or not, because Hush Productions definitely was a critical role in the R&B sound, and there was different elements that brought a lot of greatness to that management company, behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, and your role as a producer was very instrumental. Was it at some point that you just decided that you no longer wanted to be involved with Hush Productions, or you just kind of left on your own in a different other way?
Well, when the money gets funny, you reevaluate. So that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
It could have ended up being something gone on and on and on. But that's like in any music business when it's not organized in terms of like other businesses have unions and things like that. The music business is totally independent contractor for the most part, and things happen. So
right.
That was the determining factor for me. It's time to go.
But again, you was one of the key figures that brought a lot to the table of Hush Productions with the artists that you had worked with and the type of sound and music skills that you brought to the table. So obviously, again, I don't know how long Hush Productions remained in operation after you left, but that whole R&B type of style and R&B type of sound was very, very popular in that time span. With Evelyn Champagne King, Stephanie Mills, Melba Moore, of course, Freddie Jackson. It had somewhat of
Lisa Morgan.
Right.
May Lisa Morgan.
Maylisa.
It's Maylisa Morgan.
Maylisa Morgan.
That's how I say it.
Okay, Maylisa Morgan. Right, I forgot about her. She did a cover of "Do Me Tonight" of Prince.
"Do Me Baby" by Prince. I produced that as well.
You did. All right. Yeah. But I'm trying to remember the song by Prince though. I can't remember his version. I mean, did it stay on the charts long? I'm trying to remember his version.
I'm not certain. I don't even know if it actually was released as a single on Prince. It may have been, but I don't know. Prince, did so much. It was hard to keep up.
Right. Well, again, I don't want to really make always comparisons, but obviously when your collaborations with Kashif and he would move on to produce Whitney Houston's, well, at least one of her songs, and what it was which song did Kashif actually produce for Whitney Houston?
Lala Cope's song written by Lala Cope. You Give Good Love.
You Gave Love, right? Exactly. So that was a hit. Not to say that this is really relevant and it has really nothing to do with you, but seeing that we're talking about Whitney Houston, wasn't it by coincidence that she actually turned down the role to be on the Bill Cosby show? I think she was supposed to play Sandra Huxtable, and she wanted to become, I guess, a big singer. And I'm not saying, again, how things all come together, but if that's the case, then Kashif now gets the opportunity to produce Whitney Houston instead of her being an actress. So sometime, I don't know if that's relevant or not. But putting all that aside, did you ever have any interest in wanting to work with Whitney?
I mean, of course, I never pursued it because it was, that was like a lot. Clive Davis, chose who he wanted to work on with me. I guess I wasn't in that number. So, but sure, I would have loved to work, with Whitney.
Right. No regrets, but just you would have loved to work with her again like that. It looks on paper, just my instinct, that Freddie Jackson was probably your biggest artist that you work with. It may not be by a large margin, but just going by the amount of number one R&B hits that Freddie Jackson had and how successful his albums consist of. Do you look at it that way, or do you have a different feel of some of the artists that you was able to work with towards who kind of stands out as one of the best?
Oh, that's a fact. He is my biggest. And it's twofold. Well, I have a different take on it. Freddie to me was like if I could sing, that's how I would sing. If I could really sing, you know what I mean? So it's almost like I knew God knew not to give me a voice because you probably have to hurt me or something. But in terms of like my favorite project was Lilo because it was my first. And, it was innocent. I had an opportunity to stretch out and try things. But as time goes on and hits start coming, now you become under a clock. So you can't work as, methodical or whatever. And so, artists, like Freddie is busy. So you have to get him when you can. Whereas Lilo in the beginning, he was just didn't have anything to do but create this record. So I kind of grew up on that record. So it helped propel me to become a better producer, where I was able to, spill out Freddie and other artists coming forward. But I learned how to truly produce on Lilo.
Stan, let me bring you into this and let me test your memory a little bit. You're probably not going to remember this, but I want to clarify something. One time, me and I guess we was talking on the phone, and we was talking about one-hit wonders. And you mentioned not Stephanie. You mentioned Evelyn King as a one-hit wonder. You may not remember this, but I do remember you mentioning this. Are you just thinking of maybe her one song that stands out? Because you may not even remember you telling me that you just felt like Evelyn King was like a one-hit wonder. I hate to put you on the spot like this.
Well, I semi-remember what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember our conversation, but it was always said that she was a one-hit wonder. I know she had more than one hit.
Right.
But she was like, she just blew up out of nowhere and just rocked the stage. That's how I remember.
Yeah.
Evelyn Champagne.
Evelyn had at least 2 massive hits.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. So the 2 hits.
Shame.
Shame. That's what I'm saying. Shame was
no slouch.
right.
And
That
then
was
Love Come
that
Down,
was
of course.
the follow-up one, but I only remember those 2. I mean, not a true one-hit wonder. But it's like, it seemed to me that she had the potential of being a huge megastar with endless future.
Well, again, Paul, do you kind of see it the same way? Because I kind of got the same feeling that I think Evelyn King really had that ability to be, and she was a great singer, don't get me wrong. And I don't want to say she was I hate to say it this way, in the same category with Whitney Houston, or could have been in the same category, but I just get the feeling she could have been much, much, much more successful. And she was very successful, but I don't know, is it something that you think was kind of missing or holding her back to probably get to that next level, if you kind of agree with that assessment or not?
Well, I mean, she can sing. I mean, Evelyn was actually the easiest artist in terms of quick. I mean, those vocals you hear on Love Come Down and I'm in Love, and those things happen like basically one takes.
Right.
And her background singing just effortlessly. So in that aspect, you're right. But it takes more than just that. As we, you grow to see, and you live long enough, you see. And it takes a commitment from your management or production company, whatever, however, that they're, believe in the dream, of like a Whitney Houston or the Mariah Careys. It's not, they're great singers, but they also have a commitment behind them. Beyonce, Beyonce, it's a great artist, but part of the reason why she is Beyonce is there's a huge business commitment to her. Somebody sees the dream and somebody's working that dream for them, and somebody that's got some deep pockets are working those dreams. Now, Evelyn may not have had that, and that may have been the deciding factor to keep her out of that scope or of artists. But in terms of talent, hands down, she can compete with the best of them. But that's not what this business is made of. It's like, that's part of the problem. I mean, part of the thing. You got to have the records or whatever, the talent. Well, let me say that again. That used to be the thing where you had to have the talent.
Right.
Today, your talent doesn't have to be as amazing. You still have to have some talent, but it doesn't have to be quite as amazing as it used to have to be in order to get out there and be successful.
I think a lot of people don't understand I think a lot of people just don't understand the music business. And I don't know if this analogy works, but it's like a new product line of an automobile. The car you see is the car that was chosen in terms of design, but there could have been hundreds of designs. The one that was chosen and the money went behind, and all of the dyes that are made, and we're gonna go with this. And the artist or the performer is a part of a whole production team, and the amount of time, energy, and effort and planning that goes into creating what you listen to on the radio is mind-boggling. People think it just happens. Oh, I want to be a star, and that's just not to delegitimize anyone's desires or dreams, but it isn't you just want to be a star. It isn't you just pop up. And even with today's, social media, and while it takes a lot less, I think eventually it's going to come back around to where you have to have talent. You got to have a team behind you. And the old business model of how people become successful in the entertainment industry is tried and true. But that's just...
Well, ironically, that could be the topic for next week. I'm thinking about pushing a social media format and just get the ins and outs on, is it just so easy today to be successful in entertainment because of social media? But again, you're stating that you feel at some point it's going to twist back around where the talent is going to have to probably get back more greater.
You're going to need talent. You're going to need talent management, and you're going to need people who actually know how to produce stuff that's sustainable. And that doesn't come because you have a hope to do so. It takes time, energy, effort, commitment, and a lot of work, and a lot of being in the right place at the right time.
Exactly. Good assessment towards what you're addressing about the talent. And I guess, again, Evelyn King was a great artist, but talent alone, it takes other areas that you got to have, like the management side, the commitment side, the business side. And Paul, also to get back to another artist that you work with, Melba Moore, I kind of picture Melba Moore somewhat in that same category. She was an actress trying to get involved in television, and I just can't picture her really being devoted long term to her music background. Not to take anything.
Many people would argue with you on that one.
They would argue with that? Okay. Well, let's clarify this then.
Well, Melba is can do a lot. She can act, she can sing. Sometimes when you make it, whatever you make it as first, like in her case, she made it on Broadway first. Sometimes, and especially back then, it's harder to escape that. So somebody to take you serious, trying to do, like, let's say you all of a sudden you want to do records, R&B records. Unless you have a massive hit that would make them forget that you are that which you previously became famous for, it's a tough road. I had success on her with Love. I forgot the song. The song that I did on her, it was successful, but it wasn't successful enough to make you forget that she got a Tony. So it's that kind of thing. People overcome, but it takes something massive to overcome what people first thought of you. And I think that's what happened with Melba.
Exactly. Her background starting off in Broadway. I actually wasn't even thinking about that totally, but you're right. People might picture Melba more as a Broadway star and a good singer. Don't get me wrong. But again, you got to come up from what you just stated, something massive to kind of make you forget about her Broadway background and her initial starting off in Broadway as well. But again, that shows her versatility too, though, that she can act, she can sing, she can do Broadway. So I don't want to give you the impression, Stan, I'm taking anything away from Melba.
Oh no, Melba is a solid talent. I mean, I don't know if you had to. I say it every chance I get. If you ever get a chance to hear her scat like Ella Fitzgerald, your mouth would. I mean, it would be one of those.
Right.
I mean, incredible. I mean, so she's old school. I mean, and old school. I mean, she's got clips of her on TV with Carol Burnett on her shows and stuff like that. So she's nothing to count off.
Right.
Count out, I should say. But she just, again, in order to forget that big thing about you, you have to have something that is equally as great or greater.
Excellent assessment as well. And then also at the time when you was with Hush Productions and you was working with Evelyn King and Freddie Jackson, you had the BET Video Network video show, MTV as well. So that gives people the exposure of the artists back then. I can't really remember Melba Moore on too many videos, but I would assume she had videos too. But that also played a critical role too at that time.
Yeah, videos, of course, Michael Jackson just kicked the door down on that. But back then, even, for black artists, if you wasn't on Michael Jackson's level, it was hard, or the record company did not make that commitment to you. It was hard to get a video because it costs a whole lot of money to make one back then. Michael set the bar when he announced that he was making, that Thriller video for $1 million. Today, that's nothing. But back then, that was like, are you kidding me? I mean, people waited for that just because they wanted to see what does a 30-minute or however long it was for $1 million. What does that look like for $1 million? So, I mean, of course, I love Michael, but all of Michael wasn't just about him as Michael the singer. It was like everything added to it, like, his persona, his, being the first to make a video to announce that he's going to spend all of this money. All of that played into your psyche. At least it played into mine. So when it was time to view that Thriller video, I was glued. I was already sold on Michael, but I wanted to see what does $1 million video look like. So it's all of that kind of stuff. That's what I'm talking about. Commitment. You got your team is built all this stuff around you. It's not just Michael the singer, because if it would have been just Michael the singer, he would have been over way before, he became an adult.
Saying that meaning what now when you're saying he would have been over if it was just as a singer, just his singing talent alone?
Right. I mean, he was an incredible, as a kid singer, there was no match. I mean, he was just absolutely insane as a singer. But as he got older, you could tell, well, I could tell, because I'm actually the same age as Michael. So I followed him like a sponge kind of thing. But I could tell after about 5 years into the game, I could see that he was freaking out about his voice changing, because he wasn't able to hit those notes like he used to as a child. So that's a pivotal moment in someone's career. I can imagine now in hindsight, record companies going, the Jackson 5 is washed up. Look, he can't even, he was a kid. He was a cute kid. The singer's behind off now. Just, he sings okay. So he had to reinvent, he had to figure that out. And then figuring it out, he figured out that, he went and got Quincy, another huge giant in his own right. So that's two giants put together. Quincy kind of propelled them into an adult market. And then after that, he realized, okay, well, I want to be the greatest. You've seen it. He became Michael Jackson.
Well, actually, when you're saying he wanted to be the greatest, he actually came up with that after Off the Wall album. And I do want to get your opinion on what you think is the best three in order from Thriller, Bad, Off the Wall. Many people would assume Thriller would be number one, Bad would be a close second, and then Off the Wall would be third. Do you kind of see it in that order towards his three best? Oh, you don't?
I see Off the Wall is the number one. And Thriller, I don't even acknowledge Bad.
You don't even acknowledge Bad?
He was starting to get a little corny to me.
Oh, okay. But what make you feel that Off the Wall was better than Thriller towards raw talent level, or just raw sound?
Just musicality, it was pure. It didn't come with all the hype of, the video. That worked. You put that song on and it worked without a video. You were in thrill. I mean, I was amazed by it without a video. I mean, videos hadn't really come into play. And see, that's the difference today, in my opinion, the music business of then and today. Like, your songs had to be so good back then that you could see the video by listening to the record. If it wasn't that good, you wasn't buying it. It was something. It had to be that good, where the video was already in the record. But once you started making videos, then people started skimping on the, it was like, well, we'll make it make sense in the video, as opposed to like, well, no, make it make sense in the record.
Right.
So it was just it just started to get watered down when
But-
the videos came in.
But that's really saying now that you think "Don't Stop Till You Get Enough" was a better song than Billie Jean. Do you still see it now? You saying the album Off the Wall was better than
The
Thriller?
project, the
Oh.
whole project. Yes, I remember where I was when I first heard "Don't Stop Till You Get It Up." I was walking down 125th Street. They had this. There was this record shop right on the corner between off of Lenox. It's on 125th Street near Lenox Avenue. It's probably not even called Lenox Avenue anymore. But anyway, they had this one speaker outside, and they was playing that song, and I was like, wow, I'm hearing these percussion, ding, 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 ding. Like, what is that? And then Michael started singing, and I was like, whoa, he scored. And that's where I was when I first heard that song, and I knew it was something special. And again, when you listen to the whole project, it was just truly something special. Now, Thriller, of course, he's trying to outdo Off the Wall, but it's like that first one was the one.
I don't know. I mean, Off the Wall is a classic now that I think about it, and we're talking about it. But Billie Jean, Beat It, Want to Be Starting Something, Human
Billie
Nature.
Jean to me was the only one on there that's like that. I hear you about Billie Jean. Billie Jean was truly special. Beat It.
The Rock. Yeah.
I like that. And I mean, Thriller was good. Now, don't get me wrong. I do consider it a great album, but Thriller brought so much more with it. It made you. It was the videos. It was all these announcements about what he was doing. He got burned and put the glove up, and all. I mean, it was.
You're
it
right.
was too much going on to make you love Thriller.
Oh.
I mean, you can't say. I mean, for me, I can't count Thriller as that because if you're gonna get burned, unfortunately, and have a glove up, and all of a sudden now you're selling 2 and 3 more million records a week because of that, then I can't count Thriller as come on in my book.
Yeah. Stan, do you?
But as a solid project from start to finish, to me, Off the Wall was it.
Was it? Yeah. Well, great songs on Off the Wall. Rock With You. He also did a duet with Patty Austin. Collaborations. What's the producer that did the Thriller? The Thriller song was produced by what? Rod Temperman was his name?
Well, Rod wrote the song. He wrote most of those. At Rock with You or whatever it's called. Off the Wall. He wrote that. He wrote Burn This Disco Down.
Right.
Thriller. Yeah. So Rod Temperton was the man. He started in Heat Wave.
That's right. Heat Wave.
If Michael hadn't gotten those songs, Heat Wave would have got those songs.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then don't forget Quincy Jones, because keep in mind, Michael Jackson was still with the Jacksons after Off the Wall. But I think the collaboration with Quincy Jones is kind of what separates Michael Jackson from, let's say, the Jacksons, because he was really the lead singer with the Jacksons. But
Absolutely.
But the producing that he brought to the table with Quincy Jones. And not to turn this thing totally on Michael Jackson, but I know many times, Stan, you felt somewhat of his downfall was when he left, not having Quincy Jones produce his other album after Bad. Do you think, I think you stated that before, that you felt maybe that's when he kind of started to go down a little bit? Or do you don't see it that way totally, Stan?
I mean, Teddy brought him back a little bit with, that Remember the Time album.
That's true.
I like that album better than I like the Bad album.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
But that album didn't do as well towards record sales. See, again, maybe that's the difference.
No, Teddy did well. I mean, the record did well.
It did well? Okay.
If you measured it against Thriller, no, none of them did well.
Exactly. Okay.
Or nobody else does well if you measure it against Thriller.
The Thriller, exactly. It's still the #1 world selling album. I think it sold 70 million copies worldwide. So it's still a record. I think it might not be the U.S. record anymore, but it's the worldwide record selling album. So
I think it's still of all time, but that's just me.
Yeah, it probably is. Okay. Well, let me ask you another question about Kashif, do you feel that the two of you could have worked together as that producing tandem, like Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, Ali Reed, Babyface? Was all of the puzzles there for the two of you to kind of formulate that duo, or was it not quite there to really make that happen?
Talent-wise, we were there. We just didn't have the history together. I mean, you look at a Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, they've been through it together prior to becoming Jam and Lewis, the successful producers. They were in, the Prince thing together. So they had a history of working together prior to. Kashif and I had no history together prior to. We just were put together as like an experiment, lab rats or whatever. And we came up with it. And, obviously I didn't get into the music business thinking I was going to have a partner, and Kashif the same. So, I mean, if we had, in hindsight, had we stayed together, maybe it could have been something special like that. But we just didn't have the history prior to connect us for the long run.
Mm-hmm. Well, Paul, do you like when you're producing an album, do you like to be the solo producer of the entire album, or do you like to work on just songs throughout the album? I mean, there's a difference, isn't it, between just like Quincy Jones pretty much solo produced. He might have co-produced with Michael Jackson some songs and a few other artists, but he basically will get the credit as, let's say, the producer of, his albums. Do you like that concept of kind of being the solo producer and having total control, or do you like working with other producers on a song or album?
If I'm being honest, I like having the control of being and working as a solo producer. But I don't mind necessarily bouncing opinions on people, but even then I'm like, if it doesn't outweigh what I'm thinking, it does not matter. Mm-hmm. So, I'm selfish that way. I have to say.
Right.
I don't know if that's. I don't know if that's necessarily selfish, because creative control, to me, is the ultimate expression of an artist, and the producer is an artist in produce. The album. I think a lot of times the general public doesn't understand how much goes into the album from the producer. The producer creates the album. I mean, the artist is the front person. They get a lot of the credit, but really, without a good producer,
well, I think I approach it differently in terms of mindset. See, a lot of my history with a lot of artists, as I run across them and talk with them, they're into the art of it, the beauty of creation and all that stuff, which is great, and their talents, speaks for them, but they don't understand. Like, I come from the school where if it ain't a hit record, what are you talking about? But artists are like, when I create, I'm in the stars, and I feel the spirit of, and yeah, I get it, but if you don't have a hit record, you ain't going nowhere.
Right.
And I come from that school. That's why I'm selfish with it, because if I let the artist dictate also, it'll just be a feel good, I put the, you see the birds flying through the song. I mean, that kind of stuff. Not all of them, but most who are not studio savvy, or they just focus on their creations, they tend to be esoteric with stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be in the business aspect of it, I didn't get into the music business. Well, I got into it. I actually got into it thinking like that. But once I got in, I realized the reality check was like, dude, you ain't going to last unless you come up with a hit. So that perspective changed very quickly. So that's why I like to take the selfish approach, like sort of almost my way or the highway.
Well, as the producer, you kind of have the final say when you're producing a record or album. You kind of have the total control. Is that how the process works?
Whatever I do now, I do. But back then, I thought I did until you submit it to the record label, and then the executives decide that they want to be the producer. But you need to do this, and you need to do that. So, producers that if you're working with a label, we're under the illusion that we're in control. But ultimately, it's that corporate person, the A&R guy, whether it's that person or whoever it is, that's over the project. ultimately they have the final decision.
Mm-hmm. But what about, let's say, I mean, the sound, like when you're in the recording studio and you're putting a song together, and let's say, for instance, the singer doesn't quite feel or he doesn't agree with this approach. Can you kind of, as the producer, override the singer and saying this is the way that the song has to come about?
Oh, that's exactly what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I've had an artist group that I work with. They ended up firing me because I just would not allow them to tell me how to produce them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, you don't know.
Right. I would say as a singer or artist, you kind of just have to trust the producer. I mean, I don't know the process. If you as the artist, you select the producer or the record company decides to hire a producer for you. But I think you kind of got to go by your old gut feeling. Let the producer, he knows what he's doing. He's the one that's producing the song and album. Let him take control. Obviously, there may be some areas you just may not quite agree with as a singer when you're recording it. But I say you kind of have to have that trust factor. Like, this person knows what he's doing. It's going to come out great.
Okay.
Right. And
you produce the album yourself if you think you could do that.
Yes.
I mean, that's why you have him.
You were saying something, Paul?
That's where I come. That's the space I actually come from. Like, listen, and it could sound arrogant and whatever, but you have to be with sometimes, because if you allow the artist to control you, now your reputation is on the line, because you're sitting there wincing every time you hear the record. It's like, I'm not happy with this. But if the artist decided to override or for some reason get their record company to side with them on it, then it's those kind of things. Mm-hmm. So it could sound like it's arrogance, but it's like, no, I'm protecting my own thing. Now, if it ends up not doing whatever, then I can feel good about, well, at least I didn't allow somebody else to dictate it. I messed that up. Mm-hmm. And here's how unregulated and the music industry is versus like the movie industry. Back in the day, I should say, you had a lot of people participating in the records. You had specializers. You had the engineer. That was his job, to make that record sound the way, just great enough for public consumption. The producer didn't necessarily have that job to be the engineer. He had the focus of creating the song and putting the players together, whatever it may be, tracking it or whatever. And it was different, whether it was a arranger or if you're getting strings, you had somebody that knew how to write string arrangements, stuff like that. The movie business continued. You look at a movie credit, it's like 1 million people worked on that movie. Today's record business is literally down to 1 or 2 people for everything. And it's, in some instances, it's a sad state of affair. And then you have the creative geniuses like Prince who could do that, and it's not a problem.
Right.
So it's so unregulated that way, and I think it hinders. But if you have a true genius, they can really pull off the one-man act totally.
Well, Prince obviously comes to mind when you're saying that genius level where he pretty much did everything. I mean, I can't ever recall Prince really having to have someone write a song for him, produce a song. I mean, he may be one of the few artists that has ever just did everything. I mean, he just really didn't need anybody to do anything. I mean, he had his band and people might have given him some advice. But if you look on any Prince album, Prince and the Revolution, you're going to always see produced, written, arranged, composed by Prince and the Revolution or Prince. He was just that level. Do you still see Prince as that kind of genius level where he could pretty much do everything? And
I mean, him and Michael were my litmus test, as you will. Especially Michael, because Michael, I started out with him as a child. I remember just, again, I say Michael. Actually, Prince. All 3 of us are the same, same age, born the same year. So to me, that's just special to me. I mean, not that I'm them,
right?
But just to be in that company of having to grow up and listening and using them as my, inspiration. I remember first hearing Jackson 5. At first there was no videos or anything like that, so you only heard it on the radio. And for weeks, I thought it was a little barrel singer. Until they appeared on the Ed Sullivan show. It's like, oh, that's a boy.
Right, right.
I mean, so you have things like that. So I had a chance to really back then. You had a chance to really embrace what you were hearing. Today, you don't really have to embrace anything. You just kind of change the channel.
Exactly. And then again, also when you're talking about Michael Jackson, I mean, there's some reports that it was like a clash of egos of the falling out between Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones. Do you kind of know the whole story a little bit behind that?
I don't know that story, but I psychologically, just being in the business, I understand it. At some point, I'm Michael Jackson. At some, I done had all the success, and then, yeah, I could do this. I mean, whether he could or not, the psyche told him he could do it. So, I'm Michael Jackson.
Right.
Now, whether he could do it or not that's neither here nor there. But the ego. I mean, if you standing on top of the world, you conquered everything. Surely I could do that too.
So that's your gut feeling, you think, maybe of something to do with the falling out, just him not working with Quincy Jones anymore?
Yeah, I mean, you start thinking, he's hearing like Teddy Riley and Babyface and all these cats. I'm sure he's heard some of my stuff. And he's going, well, that's not like Quincy, but that's modern day. This is what people are digging. Quincy ain't doing that. It could have been something as simple as that.
Well, that
I need to be more I can't say that word. Relevant to what's happening now. I want that sound. The hip hop killing it. Quincy don't do no real hip hop. I need that kind of flavor. So your mind start playing tricks on me that way.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, that sounds like to me that's what it could be, because he would work with Teddy Riley, and that was a different style of music, the R&B, hip hop style that he kind of collaborated with Teddy Riley, and Quincy Jones really wasn't into that. It's not to take anything away from Quincy Jones. I mean, it's almost like, Tom Landry of the Dallas Cowboys. He was a great coach for a long period of time, but the game was changing a little bit. And maybe Tom Landry couldn't adapt to the transition. I don't know the whole story, but I think what you just said about Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson, that sounds like to me that could be the reason more of them not working together anymore. But it was definitely a great tandem for those three albums that he produced for Michael Jackson.
And also it could have been Quincy too, saying, hey man, in order for me to do this, and Quincy might have asked for some crazy amount of money to do it, and just to, like, he didn't really want to do it at this point because he doesn't need to do it anymore. So it's like, well, I'll do it for this, and then it could have been something simple as that. And Michael's like, well, I'm not paying that. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Did you ever have any type of issues, business-wise or ego-wise, with some of the artists that you was working with towards falling out or just going different ways?
No, I was a studio rat, so I kept myself away from the show business, in terms of the limelight. I kept myself out of that. I mean, when I got into the business, I thought of all of that, but I got a loud wake-up call early on. I thank God for it, because I don't know where my life would be had I just kind of like jumped in like everybody. The idea of like, I'm gonna be a star, I'm gonna be this, I'm gonna go to the top, and I'm gonna search the top, whatever. But when Rock Me Tonight was the biggest R&B record that year and did not get nominated for a Grammy, that told me something. I was like, ooh. So what do I have to? I mean, it's the biggest record on the Billboard charts for the whole year, R&B. The biggest. Doesn't even get nominated. What does a brother have to do?
Right.
And if I had to do anything more than that to get nominated, well, I'm done on that aspect of it.
Well, let me say this too also about that. Now, I realize the song didn't get nominated, and that's a tremendous disappointment. But didn't the song win an American Music Award?
I don't think so. Don't have one.
You don't have one? Okay. I thought Freddie Jackson won. Maybe he didn't win.
He might have won. Freddie won later, but not for that.
For that.
Like I said, I could see if it was just a hit record. It wasn't just a hit record. It was the biggest R&B record in the country that year. So that alone to me says, okay, if that can't, okay, it's another thing to actually win it, but you didn't even get nominated.
Right.
If I got to do something beyond that, I don't think I'm up for the task.
Yeah, because you really can't.
I became a studio rat.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, you really can't do much more than have the #1 record for the year, and it doesn't get nominated. I don't know what else you could really do. I mean, that might be the nature of the Grammys, and we did have the Grammys last night, and I mean, I guess Beyonce won 4 more Grammys, so I think she's one of the record leaders in Grammys. I don't know how many she has, if it's 25 or more, but she won 4 more. She did not win Album of the Year, which they consider as like the granddaddy.
Right. Well, obviously, there's more to it than just being great. I mean,
Right.
Yeah, they, deals are made. It's like,
yeah,
it's a, I don't want to call it because I don't really know what it is, but racism is in there somewhere. We're gonna give you this, but that grand prize, I don't think so.
right.
Or a lot of these artists, like, I'm not saying Beyonce per se, but a lot of these big artists won't even show up to an award unless they guaranteed to win. So it's all kind of political things in it, and that, to me, that based upon what it is and what I've seen it to be, that makes sense. Like, well, why? If I'm people are actually going to watch it to see me, and I'm not going to win. Are you kidding me?
You're not.
You got to guarantee me that I'm winning something to show up. If I'm gonna put they're gonna be glued to the TV just to see me.
But isn't it true that you don't know that you're gonna actually win until after the Grammys is announced, or do you know before the Grammys is announced? Because
the big dogs, the ones that's driving the show, I'm not saying that she does, but I would have assumed, because I know Stevie knew back in the day that I ain't even showing up unless I'm winning.
Okay.
So it's that, and it makes sense because TV is about ratings.
Mm-hmm.
So if you humiliate the biggest star like a Beyonce, she shows up and shows, because people are gonna watch it because they want to see her.
Right.
And she gets to perform and all that stuff, and then she's sitting there. Every award go by, she gets nothing. That is humiliating.
Mm-hmm. And
you know that you're the one that drove the audience to the show.
Right. So you gotta almost know. See, that's another thing about this business.
Now, for us mere mortals who don't really matter or figure into that, then we sitting there guessing like, am I gonna win?
Right. It's very political.
Very, very political. Okay.
Very, 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 very political.
Learning about that.
Very political. It's a business.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It's a business, and
that makes sense.
So you in the audience who are entertained by all of this, it's.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say it's like wrestling, because I know in the WWE or the WWF, it's already planned who's going to win. I would say that it's
a lot less in your face. Like wrestling. It's more like the NFL.
Okay.
I have a question.
What's that?
I have a question. I don't know. I didn't watch the Grammys last night, but if you did Beyonce perform last night?
I only watched the first half. The first hour. So I know Stevie Wonder and Smokey Robinson did a big performance. I don't know if Beyonce. Did you watch the entire? Yeah.
I believe it or not,
I don't know for sure.
I didn't even know it was on.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't very rarely watch TV.
My theory is, if she performed, then she was going to win that big award. But if she did not perform, that was probably the compromise. Well, if I ain't getting that, I'm not performing.
Oh, okay. So a lot of politics, a lot of ego driven in this business of the Grammys.
But she got the record done, like the most Grammys ever. So that was good enough to come. I'm gonna break the record. I'm breaking the record. Cool, yeah. I'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
See, now I'm learning a little bit about the entertainment business. You think on one hand from the outside what you think you know about the business. And when you get connected with someone like Paul Laurence is telling you the other side of the business, and you already seem like you know this, Stan, what really consists of the business compared to what you think of the business, there's still some differences. I have to know I'm going to win the award for me to show up.
Right. And it makes sense. You drive the audience.
Okay, you drive an audience, right, to do that. Because I'm always, I like the older Grammys. The Grammys now today is okay. It's nice. It was a good performance with Smokey Robinson and Stevie Wonder. They really did a dynamite segment with that part. I did not again watch the entire Grammy, so I don't know again for sure if Beyonce performed or not. But the performance definitely brings a lot to the Grammys. I guess the Grammys is the granddaddy. The American Music Awards is like the next level, and I think you still should feel good about winning an American Music Award too. But the Grammys,
Well, Grammys and
I mean, I have another take on all that stuff. I mean, and a lot of my opinions about it is in hindsight, of course. The Grammys has always been like racist is whatever. I mean, Marvin Gaye won his first Grammy for Sexual Healing. He has no Grammys from anything he did on Motown. None. Diana Ross has never won a Grammy.
She's never won a Grammy?
Never.
That's hard to believe, Diana Ross. What do you have to do then? If you're Diana Ross and you can't win a Grammy, what do
you have to be the right person, know the right people. It's very, very, very political.
Very political,
it's
yeah.
Very political, and to the degree that you can, there are ways that you can arrange to make sure you get one.
Okay.
It's
things I'm learning. Things,
but you know, you don't want to blow up the illusion.
Blow the illusion.
Okay.
Okay. But I'm glad we're having this conversation, giving me some different insight, because again, you want to know exactly what you get. You know me, I like to know exactly what I'm getting into. So if I ever book a guest or a topic and I'm going to talk about the Grammys, I like the fact that I know a little bit more about this now than coming on the air, asking questions, learning it. So I'm glad we are having this part of the conversation. Well, Paul, we're pretty much out of time, man. It was a great interview, fun. I think your bio and this other topics might have outweighed Hush Productions, and I don't take anything away from Hush Productions Company. And I definitely want to give Kevin Harewood a tremendous shout for putting this together, arranging this interview with yourself. He has been a dynamite force to the network, providing key guests. And this whole Hush Productions Company trilogy was kind of his arrangements, and he was the first one on. And I think the only thing that's probably left is to get a music artist, as another level of Hush Productions. But if there's anything else that you would like to say to end this particular segment, feel free to do so.
Okay. Yeah, I first want to give a shout out to Hush Productions. I don't think I've ever publicly thanked them for the opportunity that they've given me. I do count it as being special. That's Charles Huggins, Bo Huggins, all the staff, Kevin Harewood, Jim Terrell, Zach Vaz, Linda Simmons, all the staff. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody. Please forgive me if I didn't call your name. So, whatever we've gone through, it was a great experience for me. And I also just thank you guys for having me on today's show. And hope to see you again soon. Yeah.
Oh, definitely, man. You bring a lot to the table. It was very informative, interesting, and fun, too. I mean, I like when we was talking about Michael Jackson and getting your views on that, albums that he had, did, in that order, and just many other things about you, during this particular segment that I really enjoyed. And definitely, I mean, I got your contact information, and I would love at some point in the future to bring you back on as well. So don't feel away about that. And again, it was our pleasure to have you as a guest this week on Morning Talk Live with J. Stan McCauley on Talk Show.
God bless you, brother, and continued success. And it was a pleasure. And thanks for taking time out of your schedule to join us.
Thank you. Likewise to you. God bless you as well.
Okay.
All right.
Take care.
Godspeed. Dynamite, Jonathan.
Yeah. I had fun this one. I mean, last week was serious, intense. I don't know if it showed, man, but I really was just going through the motions. I mean, I ain't taking anything away from the topic or the guest. And I think when you have enough time to really plan a guest and put everything together, it sometimes it will come across, So, again, I mean, this was a real interesting show to me personally, and I hope the audience out there felt the same way as well. And like I said, I learned some things about the business now, about the Grammys.
Oh yeah, very political. Very political. Very political.
Political. Yeah.
Very political. All right, we'll take a short break. We'll be right back. Morning Talk. Stick and stay. Don't go anywhere.
How do you define evil? Is it the pedophile school administrator or taxation without representation? Is it the gatekeeping community leaders who sell out the very people they are fighting for? Or is evil the politician that puts out lies and takes in cash? However you may classify evil, having to choose the lesser of two evils still leaves you with evil. No wonder so many people don't vote. It's time for constituents to flip the script and leave the plantation of party politics and free your political mind.
Oh yeah. All right, I think we got our feedback problem solved.
That's good. That's good.
Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right. That was a lot of fun.
It's fun, yeah. I can't tell. And I think next week's show is going to be fun, too. I mean, another individual in the television, media industry. Not so much in the music industry. So definitely a lot of emphasis on television, entertainment, the background scenes. Just trying to debate if I want to go with the social media topic. Because, again, I'd rather bring an expert on.
Nothing like an expert.
And then me and you have this hardcore follow-up discussion. I don't want to do it the other way around.
Yeah.
I really want to ask you some questions about social media, the ins and outs, but I'd rather get the guests on as an expert.
I like that. I like that a lot.
But in a constructive way. I like to have a little fun with you.
I know Jonathan.
You know me.
He's getting me back for the 5th grade.
6th grade. Yeah,
6th grade. 6th grade. Okay.
Yeah, it was Cody. It was Bertie Cody. 82, 83.
I used to be a volunteer at Clarence Barber School, and I go in there and help out the little students. And Jonathan was one of the students.
82, 83.
Yeah.
40 years ago, we were back in that time span, man.
Wow.
But you know, in Connecticut, marijuana is legalized now, or the sale of cannabis, and it's a business now.
Yeah.
You have this belief, and you said it on the air, so it is airing a little dirty laundry, but we've already discussed this before. Your son has to have a job if he's gonna live in your household. I believe those were your words.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. If your son decided that he's going to open up a cannabis business and sell cannabis, that's a legal job now. Would you have a problem with that? Would you get involved in saying he can't do this? Or would
no. He's grown.
So he can sell, so he can open up a dispensary.
He wanted to have a legal dispensary and work in a cannabis shop. That's up to him.
Oh, okay.
He's grown. I don't impose my moral and ethical code on other people.
So that sounds like you're not in favor of legalized marijuana.
Absolutely
in
not.
But
Absolutely not.
if somebody is grown enough and they pass the proper regulations, you can't stop them. I mean, you're not. It's not for you. You're not going to promote it.
Right. I don't agree with the sale of cannabis.
Okay.
I just don't.
Yeah.
I have friends that do, and friends that partake in the cannabis. Become one with the earth. Become one with the earth. De-stress and inhale the smoke of unity. You know, whatever it is that floats people's boats.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, you did a good job answering that question. I thought you was going to be a little tricky, wishy-washy, but you answered it
Well, Jonathan, I never am wishy-washy.
You're not wishy-washy. You're right.
If you ask me a question, I will answer the question.
Exactly.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't always, like you say, initiate these
I'm not
conversations.
I don't initiate a lot of things, but I won't shy away from a question. I may not bring one up.
That's true. I noticed that.
But everything, I don't believe everything is necessarily needs to be said. But if someone asks me a question, I will answer the question.
Right. Exactly. Well, again, I mean, as a society, we're moving more towards doing things today. I mean, alcohol is sold on Sundays. That used to never be the case. Package stores can open on Sundays.
We're sliding down. Now, in the paper this morning, I think it's the first selectman of, what is it, Simsbury? Did you read the paper this morning?
No, I try to check.
Is it Simsbury or is it Avon? Let me look here and see. The Hartford Current. A lot of people don't like the Current. They don't read the Current. They say it's anti-Hartford. But you know, the Current is the official paper of record. And you know what happens, the talking points for everyone come out of the Current. It's Simsbury. Simsbury set to ban retail cannabis sales. It's front page of the Connecticut section.
Oh, it's going to ban it?
Ban. Simsbury is set to ban retail cannabis sales for 18 months. It could be extended. Now, in a 2-4 vote, one of the selectmen, and then, of course, the first selectman, voted in favor of the sales. There are 4 other selectmen that said no. So the 2-4 vote, it could change at the next public hearing, but it's probably not going to happen. Now, they're trying to get this as a referendum. They need 1,800 signatures to get on the referendum for a ballot vote. But no, they don't want to have cannabis sold in Simsbury. But there's a Simsbury there's a place in Simsbury that grows cannabis. Their business will not be impacted by the ban. Just the retail sale of cannabis.
Right.
But of course, Hartford is on the bandwagon of wanting to have, cannabis stores everywhere. Now, in a town where people say there are too many liquor stores,
right,
they want to open up cannabis stores.
Yeah.
And there are towns, that people say, well, we need equity and equal access to housing. There's redlining. They don't want certain people moving into certain communities. And folk want to move into those communities, but those communities don't want cannabis sales.
Right.
But they'll sell cannabis to the inner city, where you can go and buy it.
Right.
And the inner city, of course, gets a little tax bone. Some table scraps. We'll throw you a little tax incentive for your little programs, and that should be satisfactory enough to keep you willing to, bring cannabis purchasing into your community.
Well, Simsbury, they have the legal authority to ban it. It can't be overridden by the state.
No, not
Okay.
if the town decides we don't want to sell cannabis here.
Okay, so they can make that decision.
Yeah, but that's sure. Why not? They're the head of the constituents don't want that there. Our constituents are fighting for a cannabis store on every corner. Right now, there are a lot of people in Hartford who don't want cannabis to be sold here.
Okay. But they're probably not going to ban it like Simsbury. It's probably not going to be banned.
Take an act of the city council or a act of a referendum, because state law says you can. You can do this because, of course, money trumps all other things. The fact that people can make money off of it, then that means it's okay.
Well, let me give my take on this whole bigger picture. I was just told by someone, I was always under the assumption that Hartford had 100 churches. Someone told me there's 250 churches in Hartford.
Sounds about right.
Give or take. I mean, it's somewhere in that ratio. That's a big difference than 100 that I was under the assumption towards. And he felt if the religious focal point was, say, united, that's what he said, and then strong as a focal point, then many of our societal problems would not be as difficult to challenge or deal with towards the way it consists of now. So churches and different religions is not the problem. We have many churches, we have many different religions in our city. We have many package stores, as you mentioned. And now the retail sales of cannabis is about to happen, or is pretty much in place. And we have many other factors that consist of in our city. It's how you look at the direction of the city. Is it going in the right direction? Is it at a standstill? Is it going in the wrong direction?
Depends on who you ask.
Depends on who you ask. I mean, maybe tonight at this meeting with Bridget Prince and the EPA and MDC, the city of Hartford, if they're going to be representative, it could be the starting point of moving some areas in the city in a better direction.
Well, the meeting tonight is about flooding in people's basements. This is not a community meeting about all things wrong with Hartford.
So just the flooding. That's
flooding, yeah.
But even that alone, I think, is a good starting point. To deal with a problem, like you say, Stan, you like to fix a problem.
Right. People flood. Their sewage is backing up in their basement during flood, during heavy rains. Your basement is filled with other people's sewage.
Well, see, my point is, Stan, at some point, it's better just to fix one key problem than trying to get every problem resolved. I think in the inner city that consists of many different problems, sometimes it's better just to focus on and get something resolved that stands out, and then show that as an example towards what other problems could be resolved.
Well, suppose we were on a submarine or a ship or a spaceship, and there were a multitude of problems. There are 100 problems right now that could compromise our life and our safety. We want to work on just one of them. We have to get them all resolved. And there's enough people in the city that all of the problems can be resolved. It's just a matter of is there the will to do that? And the obvious answer to that question is no.
No, right. So there's a way to get all of the problems fixed instead of just figuring on one.
Absolutely. Problems exist and continue because no one wants to fix them. Or others feel it's not enough of a problem that it demands a fix, or it's going to cost too much money. Money is only a hindrance when you don't want to do something.
Yeah.
When you want to do something, people will move heaven and earth to get money.
Well, Stan, every now and then I will say something on the air and not off the air. I will say something off the air and not on the air. And I will also say something like I'm about to say now on the air and off the air to you. I would like personally to get my economic and housing structure in order. Improve better. And I think there's a way that could be done. I'm just probably going to have to get a few things corrected that I don't think should be impossible, but it could be a little slight challenge. So I think sometimes if you take your own personal self and get that area resolved, and then talking about trying to get the whole community, because again, you're talking about all of these problems in the city, they all could be resolved, but who's going to resolve? I mean, do you turn to the city government? Do you turn to elected officials?
It depends on the problem. First, you have to define what the problem is. Personal problems require me,
right.
maybe some other people in my circle.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you get professional help. If it's financial, you can get some, finance guru.
Mm-hmm.
If it's emotional, you get someone to help with the headspace.
Right.
If it's someone's been threatening or threaten to harm you or stalk you, you call the police.
Right.
So there's different solutions to different problems.
Mm-hmm.
Not all problems require government.
Okay.
Government is necessary if the problem is with the government. If we talk about sewage flood in your house, I don't know if that's a government problem. That sounds like the people who deal with sewage problem. All right. And then who has oversight of those people? You bring them in. All right. So depending upon what the problem is, you find the solution. But for all of those things, there are people who can fix them. Over the weekend, people's pipes burst. Is that the city's fault? No. It got cold outside. It might be no one's fault. But now you have to fix it. So you call a plumber.
Right.
If there's only one problem and one plumber, you got a problem. So he's busy, so you call a different plumber. You can't just let the water keep flowing in your house.
Right.
You shut the water off. That's the immediate fix. Shut the water off at the main. Now, someone has to come and get the water out. So there's a people who come and remove the water. So whatever the problem is, there can be reasonable solutions. So, yeah, there are a lot of problems. But you find the correct fix and apply it to the problem. I think sometimes people have a tendency to say, well, we got a problem over here, we got a problem. Identifying the problem is great. Now, what's your solution to the problem that is affecting you?
Right.
You are not the community. You're a part of the community. You are not we. You're you.
You're you, right.
And people always, well, what are we going to do for the community? Who's we and who, and define community for me? So people sometimes see that there's a problem that they see. And sometimes the problem isn't a problem at all. It's just something that somebody doesn't like.
Right.
But, if you have a problem, find a fix to it. That's just the way I think.
Well, Stan, this new documentary, this new program, Hartford Frontiers, if that's how you... Frontlines, right. It's very interesting and very accurate, I think.
And you can actually watch the Frontline series on our network.
On your network? Oh, you can?
AccessTV.org.
Oh, okay.
You go there, scroll down, you'll see it. I put it there, yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Well, they're doing some areas that's hardcore. I mean, the drug issues that exist in the city. The one I looked at briefly this morning was dealing with a woman and the homeless problems combined with the drug problems. And Stan, your approach on an adult, because you will bring this up time to time, that you're grown. So I don't know if you say that meanings that as an adult, you should have your life in order. You should not have issues.
You should, but that doesn't mean that you do.
Okay.
The adult that does not have their life in working order needs help.
Right.
So you get them the help they need. This is not rocket science.
But you're not saying just because you're an adult that means you shouldn't have issues. Like a woman shouldn't be homeless because she's an adult. You're not saying
she
that.
She shouldn't be homeless, but she is. So we help her.
Okay.
Right. We're not going to take care of her unless she is incapable of taking care of herself.
Herself, right. So
then she becomes a dependent, like small children.
So you feel she's an adult, help the woman, get her a situation where she's not homeless, but not take care of her. It's not going to be...
Right. She's an adult. She needs to take care of herself unless she can't.
Okay.
There should be people who care. And there are.
Well, it's hard for front lines. Is
They clearly care.
They
Otherwise,
care.
they would be producing documentaries about the situation.
Right.
But as long as the documentary isn't being made 10 years from now about the same woman, because people pointing out what's wrong and not applying a fix. See, to me, the primary person responsible for the fix is the person who can identify that it's broken. Now, if you can point out that it's wrong, the first person in the line of fix is the person looking at the wrong.
Well, they showed one woman on the Frontline segment, and she says she has been to CRT, all of these other different agencies, and she still can't get her housing situation straightened out.
I don't know why. I don't know what her situation is. But if you have if a person exhausts all the available remedies to help and is still in a problem, then perhaps I would humbly suggest they need a deeper level of assistance.
Right.
If they don't need a deeper level of assistance, then that would mean all the agencies that are trying to help are ineffective. It's got to be one or the other.
Yeah.
If the agency is ineffective, the people who are contributing to that ineffectiveness need to be removed.
Well, I think one thing that they tell many people that's homeless is call 211. That's the first step. You got to chronically be homeless. So you have to have really no place to live before some agencies are going to really try to get you some type of housing. They'll tell you go to the shelter now. That's the first step. So first step is call 211. I have no place to live. Then you call 211. Then the next step is go to a shelter. Many people don't want to go to a shelter.
So see, you don't have a Learjet or a 757 with your name on the side of it. You can't fly off to the Bahamas. You can't decide to have, lobster mac and cheese tonight.
Right.
Well, I don't want to go to a shelter. Well, you're homeless and it's 3 degrees outside. So what do you want? Yeah. Well, I would like to stay at the Hilton. Well, unfortunately, you can't.
Right.
And someone has to be hardcore about this.
About that, right.
You have a problem. The system is trying to help you, but that's not good enough for you. So what do you want? Oh, I'd like to have a house. Lots of people would like to have a house. I don't want to sound cold and elitist, but at the end of the day, someone with the problem has to be a willing contributor to their solution, Jonathan. Well, that's all I'm suggesting.
Let me use myself. If I was in that situation and I got no money, I got no food, I got no place to live, and it's freezing to death like it was Saturday night, I got to get out of the cold. So if the shelter is the only place that's available, that's where I'm going to go. If it's a situation, well, I'm about to be homeless and I'm on the borderline and you're giving me, well, you got to go to the shelter. I may say, well, look, man, I don't really want to go to a shelter. Can you put me in? I can go to the airport if I can stay at the airport. Could you put me
Where
in?
are you going to stay at the airport?
There's a way. I've seen by working at the airport stand, I've seen homeless people in the airport.
So where do they stay?
They try to mingle in areas.
They walk around the airport during the day. They sit down, take a little break, get up. Then what happens at nighttime?
Well, one person acts like he's a passenger. He has a luggage, so he gives them people. I can see through it after a while that this person is here every night or every other night. And then at some point, the Connecticut State Police.
There we go. Right. If you can see them, so can security. Homeland Security, State Police. The airport is a very, very guarded facility.
It is.
There's not a homeless person. If you look funny, drinking your Dunkin' Donut coffee, someone gonna come up to you. So they know who the homeless are.
They know, right?
They know who the homeless are on the subway stations. So sometimes the system will absorb you. All right, he ain't got no place to stay. It's cold out. Let them stay here. Don't say anything to them. After 3 days, look, you got to get up out of here.
Get out of here. And I've seen
You're
that
a security risk.
Right.
We're going to kindly ask you to leave. If you don't leave, we're going to have an officer come and physically remove you. You'd be placed under arrest.
Yeah. Well, I've seen the employee and this young man in his 20s crashing at the hotel. He wasn't really technically homeless. He just had transportation issues, so he thought he could get around it by just staying at the airport. But staying at a shelter is not peaches and creams. Now, people do get their things stolen. There's a lot of things about the shelters that may make you realize
it's a last ditch emergency living condition. It's not a great place by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
Particularly if you're a female.
You
don't want to be on the street as a female. Or as a male. I know people get beat to death. Not beat to death, but beat up badly.
Right.
Being homeless, all that stuff taken. It's a very ruthless environment to live in. Very doggy dog. And so to the degree that people can be helped, there are systems in place in the city of Hartford that you can be helped.
Yeah.
If you want help. Now the problem a lot of times is there's some mental issues. Some of the people are not, they've fallen through the cracks, and there needs to be better service to help these individuals. And there can be. It's a matter of, is that what we want as a society? And if it is, are we holding those who've been charged with providing those services accountable for deliverables?
Well, I'll tell you one thing is some people would say, why don't you just open up your Excel Center? Why don't you just open up all of the churches? Why don't you just open up all of the schools? But that may not be always.
That's not the answer.
That's not the answer.
Absolutely not. We need to get people help.
Right. But I'm saying
to resolve their issues. So what do you want? So you're gonna have everyone just come to the Excel Center and just sit in there? Now we're hungry too, so you need to feed us. Well,
Right.
I don't have a job, so I want to just stay here forever. I mean, there's no end to the saga of, well, what are we gonna do about?
Well, Stan, if you monitor people, because I heard even with the Hartford Main Library, many of the homeless people were going to the Hartford Main Library, but they closed. So people survive all throughout the year. It's just when things catch up with you after a while, it starts to outline. Somebody freezes to death on the street corners, or the shelters now are having issues. The pandemic created another problem that you can't keep people in the close confinement.
Right. We are aware of all the problems. What we have a lack of are solutions that people are.
Well, the solutions is housing is more expensive today than it was 3 or 4 years ago.
That's not a solution. That's a statement of fact.
So either the housing cost has to come down or your income has to come up.
We're not talking about those. Are not the people that are on the street.
They're not.
No.
They have no income or very little.
Most of the people on the street don't have income, and they're not homeless because the housing costs are too high. They're homeless because they have social issues, many of which are mental.
Okay.
If it was a matter of just giving them the money necessary to get over the hump to get that apartment, then that would be a solution.
Right.
But that's not the problem. That's an easy to solve problem.
Right. So deal with a lot of the substance.
All right, so you have to deal with the issue at hand with a solution that fits it.
Okay.
You can't identify all the homeless people that are homeless for a myriad of reasons, whether they're ex-military, whether they're people who have psychological problems, whether they are unable to be in the social construct that we live in. They've been expelled from their homes. Their family don't want anything to do with them. Other people in the community don't want anything to do with them, and they have fallen through the cracks. The solution to them isn't, well, housing is too expensive. So you would, if you identify all these problems,
right,
and then we say the solution is something over here, well, these people have a job. They would like a better quality of home. Those are two separate problems.
Okay, all right.
So you can't use all of these to then justify why this rent has to be here, because these people aren't suffering from mental issues,
Right.
that place them in a perpetual state of.
Well, I tell you one thing though, regardless if life is fair or if it's not fair, if you are living from paycheck to paycheck, and just recently I just found out my family up in Boston, they rent in Roxbury has gone from 1,700 to 3,100, so they can't even stay in that particular home or that particular area
Well,
anymore.
they're special people, so they're
Okay, but again,
they're not a good example.
they're not a good example of, okay,
folk in homeless situation.
right. But if you are having challenges and you have money and you have a job and you have transportation and you can't get the type of housing that at least you would prefer to have, imagine what's this like when you have no money, you have no income coming in, you have no stable address. Many people don't want, the first thing they ask you is, which address? Where do you live? We can't send our mail to you. I mean,
But once again, we're identifying problem. We know that's a problem.
yeah.
So, solution. What's the solution to that?
Well, I told you the solution. They tell you call 211. I don't know if
Right.
that's,
So, I mean, we're getting in a loop here, in a causality loop. We're going round and round and round and round, identifying problem, identifying problem, identifying problem. Like identifying the problem begs an immediate solution. Just if we say we don't have any water, so now because we said it, somehow magically water's going to start flowing.
well, the solution is, again, they'll tell homeless people you have to call 211. You know, we call 211. Let's see if we can get you in an emergency shelter situation for the night.
Right.
And after a while, you may be eligible to go there every single night. But that's not really fixing you. That's just giving you a place to stay for the night, and then you have to leave the next morning.
So what would you like to happen for these people, Jonathan?
Well, again, I have to look into it towards opening up the XL Center because, again, you say that might create other problems. That's not the
Right,
answer.
I don't think that's the solution. Let's not open up the XL Center. Let's open up people's houses.
Well, that's a personal decision now. That affects can I trust this person that I don't know inside my home?
Well,
The XL Center, you can probably have a bathroom, I guess. I'm just saying a short-term day problem that needs immediate attention. The shelters are filled up.
Maybe they could go home. Let them go home. Let them go back to their home. They got family somewhere. Let them stay with family.
Yeah. When you peel back the layers, you'll find a lot of these things come from they did something along the way that created the situation. They just didn't become homeless just by accident.
Right, Jonathan. So, it's
Well, help them well.
it's a lot more complicated than just opening up the XL Center. So now are they going to just go in the XL Center and take over? Shut down the business of the XL Center?
Yeah. And I tell you, that was a nightmare when they had Hurricane Katrina. They put a lot of people in the
There you go.
Superdome.
And next thing you know,
it was rape charges and a lot of stuff.
all kinds. It's a horrible situation.
Right.
You're pushing people into this.
Yeah.
No, that's not a solution.
Well, I mean, one-on-one counseling to figure out if this person needs some mental substance abuse analyst to deal with this issue. If you got a substance abuse problem, you have to get that cleaned up. If you have any type of psychiatric mental illness issues, maybe there's a psychiatric program that you have to get instilled in.
And these are things that might be big heavy lifts the government might be able to handle because it has deeper pockets to help people get well. And so if folks work together to resolve these problems so that the community is helping, the churches are helping, nonprofits are helping, businesses are helping, and there are agencies that give aid who sincerely want to help people, not profit off of their misery and illness forever. And then you can bring about these changes. But these things are intentional.
A
lot of folk just don't care.
Yeah.
As long as they don't have to look at the people
Yeah.
or see them sitting on a heat grade, they're
Right.
good.
They're good, yeah. The don't care approach, yeah. Because sometimes it's easy just to care about yourself.
And very easy to care about yourself. So there are systems in place, but people have to take advantage of the system. And the architect of one's trajectory, the chief architect of your trajectory is yourself.
Well, let me just say this. I know we're running out of time. I mean, I understand everybody got to focus on their self, and everybody's not caught up into social ills and social inequities, social economic inequities. That may not be the calling for everybody. So I understand everybody may not just be interested in dealing with it one-on-one. They may say, okay, I can refer you, or you should go to this particular person. But just because you don't hear or know anyone that's overdosed on fentanyl drugs, or you don't know someone that's recently been shot or killed through gun violence or through some hit and run incident, it still exists. It's still a problem.
No one is thinking that these things don't exist, Jonathan. It's just that now that everyone knows they exist, now what?
Yeah.
It still comes down to what are you going to do about it?
Well, this person, Mark Jenkins, who does this Frontline segment with Andrew Woods.
I know Mark very well.
You know
I
Mark?
know Andrew. Yep.
Andrew
And
Woods.
Kennard Ray. I know the people that doing this.
Right.
Yeah.
They have a very difficult task on their hands.
They all, yes, Mark with the Harvard harm reduction is every day he's out there on the front lines. Andrew's out there on the front lines. They're doing the best that they can with what they have. Could they use more? I'm sure that they could. So to the degree that those who to offer these resources do so, they could help more people. So the question is, do we want to help people?
Right. And I think you've interviewed Mark Jenkins one time. I think you've had him on one of your shows. I can't remember which show. Yeah. Well, I think I don't know if I ever reached out to Mark Jenkins. I think
you just have him come back
could.
in.
Yeah, I'm pretty much booked
we're
up.
running out of time, John.
Okay, great, interesting conversation after the interview. I like this conversation.
Yeah, I know you do. We can go on and on and on and on and on about the problems and what's being done about them.
Yeah.
We need to do more, than talk. Now, these are things that folks should be asking all the people running for mayor about what are their plans to deal with these problems.
Right. At some point, you're going to have the mayors on.
Right, but I mean, these are questions people could
ask now. Yeah, don't have to wait.
Call these people up, call their campaigns up, tell them you'd like to sit down and have a coffee with them and ask them about their plans for the future and what they want to do for the homeless.
Yeah.
And hold them to it. And they have to be substantive plans, not a candidate that's pointing out what's wrong. We know what's wrong.
Well, they should also be able to contact your current mayors and your current city council people too. They don't have to just go, because the people that's running for office is not in no form of authority now. So.
Yeah, but one of them will be.
Right.
This is how you bring attention to it, because these are not new problems.
Well, this Hartford Front Lines is like a new segment, though.
It's a new segment pointing out the old problems, Jonathan. It doesn't matter how new the voice is. The problem is still here.
Right.
All right. We're on time, Jonathan.
All right. Well, again, I should see you tonight. I mean, tonight is the meeting with Bridget Prince.
Tonight is the meeting with the EPA.
The EPA.
The EPA is coming to listen to the complaints and issues of constituents that have been negatively impacted by flooding in their basements and sewage backing up into their basements, and that's a real problem. All right, we're out of time. See you next week. Bye. Okay. Great guest.
All right.
My name is J. Stan McCauley, and I do business as Light Source Productions. I provide professional services in the area of strategic video communications. First, what we do is we help you craft your message using what I call the rule of the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. We do event documentation, content acquisition, full-scale productions, editing, and of course distribution through our social media television network. And with social media, video is more important now than it has ever been. Whether you're talking big business, small business, nonprofit, church, or just an individual. Let's say you plan you're planning an event, a wedding, whatever the case may be. But let's say a big event, but no video. You spent all this time, all these hours to put this event on, and maybe 100, 200 people attend the event. But more important than that is that thousands could attend by watching it on social media. But of course, you don't think about this until after the event is over. You can't afford not to capture it for social media.